In my first life, I was Marcus Chen, a successful architect who built half the skyline of downtown Seattle by age 45. I married my college sweetheart, Elena, believed in love, loyalty, and the American dream. My best friend since childhood, David Park, was my business partner. We'd started our firm together after graduation, built it from nothing into a powerhouse. I trusted him with my life, my dreams, my wife's friendship when I worked late nights. That trust killed me, literally. The betrayal wasn't just business. David didn't just steal my clients, my designs, or my company. He stole my wife. I came home early one December evening to find Elena packing. A fresh tattoo on her wrist where my name had been, now covered by David in elegant script. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she said, not looking sorry at all. "But David sees me, really sees me. You only see your buildings." The divorce papers were already filed. Half my assets gone. My company, legally wrestled away through contracts I'd signed in naive friendship. My reputation, destroyed by whispered accusations of creative theft that David planted in our industry circles. I died alone in my studio apartment 6 months later, a heart attack at 46, brought on by stress, alcohol, and the crushing weight of realizing that everything I'd built was based on lies. David attended my funeral. He even cried. Now I'm awake, and I'm 24 again. I'm standing in the cramped apartment I shared with Elena during our final year of architecture school, and I can smell her vanilla perfume from the bedroom. My hands, young, uncalloused, still believing in handshakes and honor, are shaking as I stare at the acceptance letter in my grip, the letter that changed everything the first time, an offer for an entry-level position at Meridian Design Group, the firm that would become my launching pad, the place where I'd meet the clients who'd eventually follow me when David and I started our own company. But this time I know what that letter really represents. It's the beginning of my destruction, carefully orchestrated by the friend I trusted most. My phone buzzes. David's name on the screen, just like it was 22 years ago. "Marcus, man, you get that letter from Meridian yet? I just got mine." His voice carries that same excited innocence that once made me believe we were in this together. "We should celebrate. Drinks at Murphy's. I've got news that'll blow your mind." I remember this night. In my original timeline, David told me about his acceptance to the graduate program at Columbia, his plan to expand our horizons by studying urban planning while I started working. It seemed smart then. Diversify our skills, cover more ground. I worked while he studied, sending him money, connections, opportunities. When he returned 2 years later with his master's degree, I welcomed him as an equal partner in the firm I'd started without him. I was an idiot. "Actually, David, I've got news too," I say, walking to the window where I can see his beat-up Honda in the parking lot. He's probably watching my apartment, waiting to see my reaction to the letter. "I'm not taking the Meridian job." Silence, then. "What? Marcus, that's insane. This is our chance." "Our chance?" I let 22 years of accumulated wisdom color my voice. Funny how it's always our chance when you need something, but your opportunity when you don't. More silence. I can practically hear him recalculating, wondering how I could possibly know what I know. "I don't know what you're talking about, man. You sound paranoid." "Do I?" "Let me guess. You're about to tell me about Columbia, about how you need to expand your education while I handle the grunt work, about how partners sometimes have to make sacrifices for the greater good." Each word lands like a physical blow. I can hear his breathing change. "Here's what's really going to happen, David. I'm starting my own firm, solo. And that internship you're counting on at Meridian, the one you think you've got locked up through your dad's golf buddy? I'm about to make a phone call that ensures they'll never touch anyone named Park." The line goes quiet for 30 seconds. When David speaks again, gone is the friendly facade, the carefully maintained mask of brotherhood. His voice is ice. "You remember, don't you? 3 words that confirm everything. He's back, too. My best friend, my betrayer, my killer. He's also been given a second chance. The cosmic joke of it makes me laugh, a sound with no humor in it. Every detail, I tell him, every lie, every theft, every moment you spent planning my destruction while I called you brother. Good. David's voice carries a satisfaction that chills me. Because this time, I won't wait until you're 46. This time, I'll destroy you before you even get started. I'll take everything. Your career, your reputation, your woman. And this time, Marcus, you'll live long enough to watch me do it. You think death was the worst thing I could do to you? You have no idea what real suffering looks like. The call ends. Through my window, I watch his Honda peel out of the parking lot, tires screaming against asphalt. Elena emerges from the bedroom, hair tousled, wearing my old MIT t-shirt. In this timeline, she hasn't betrayed me yet. She doesn't even know she will. Looking at her, I feel something I thought was dead. Not love exactly, but the memory of love, and the profound sadness of knowing it was never real. "Who was that?" she asks. "You sounded upset." I turn away from the window, away from the retreating taillights of my former best friend's car. 24 years old, armed with decades of hard-won knowledge and facing an enemy who knows I'm coming. That, I tell Elena, allowing myself a smile that probably looks terrifying, was the sound of war being declared. And this time, I intend to win. The first rule of warfare: never let your enemy dictate the battlefield. David expects me to take the defensive position, to react to his moves while he systematically dismantles my future. In our original timeline, I was always reactive, trusting, accommodating, letting him set the pace while I focused on the work. That passivity killed me. This time I strike first. At 6 a.m., I'm in the office of Professor Catherine Mills, the head of our architecture program and the most connected woman in Seattle's design community. She's also, as I learned too late in my first life, David's father's ex-girlfriend from 30 years ago, a connection he exploited ruthlessly to build his network while I remained oblivious. "Marcus," she says, surprised to see me at her office door before her morning coffee. "This is early." Professor Mills was always fond of me in my original timeline, but she never became a mentor the way she could have. I was too proud to ask for help, too focused on proving myself independently. David, meanwhile, played the game perfectly. Charming, needy enough to inspire protectiveness, clever enough to seem worth the investment. "Professor, I need your advice," I say, dropping into the chair across from her desk with calculated vulnerability. "I've been offered a position at Meridian Design Group, but I'm wondering if I should consider a different path entirely." Her eyebrows rise. "Catherine Mills has been in this business for 40 years. She knows talent when she sees it, and she knows which students are destined for greatness. In my original timeline, she watched me waste my potential on David's schemes. This time I'm going to give her the protege she always wanted." "What kind of different path?" "Independent practice. Residential design focusing on sustainable architecture." I lean forward, letting enthusiasm creep into my voice. I've been thinking about the housing crisis, about how traditional firms only serve clients who can afford their overhead. What if someone could prove that good design doesn't have to be expensive? This is brilliant for several reasons. First, it's exactly the kind of socially conscious approach that Catherine champions. Second, it positions me as someone who cares more about impact than profit, the opposite of how David will present himself. Third, and most importantly, it's true. In my first life, my proudest projects weren't the corporate towers that made me wealthy, but the few affordable housing developments I designed pro bono in my spare time. Catherine's eyes light up. "That's Actually fascinating. But Marcus, starting independent practice straight out of school? The financial risk alone? What if it wasn't completely independent? I pull out the portfolio I spent all night preparing. Sketches, business plans, and most crucially, 3 letters of intent from clients who don't know their clients yet. I've identified several small developers who are struggling to make affordable housing projects financially viable. They need an architect who can work within tight budgets without sacrificing design quality. The letters are from 3 different development companies, each representing projects that I know, from my first life, will be desperately seeking architectural services in the next 6 months. I also know exactly what design challenges they'll face and how to solve them. In my original timeline, these projects went to larger firms who treated them as throwaway work, resulting in the kind of soulless apartment complexes that plague every American city. "Where did you get these?" Catherine asks, examining the letters. "I've been researching the market for months," I lie smoothly. Cold calling developers, asking about their pain points. These 3 were the most receptive to the idea of working with a younger architect willing to prioritize efficiency over ego. Catherine sets down the portfolio and studies me with new interest. "This is remarkably mature thinking, Marcus. Most students your age are focused on landing positions at prestigious firms, not solving industry problems. Maybe that's why the industry has so many problems." She laughs, actually laughs, and I know I've won her over. "All right, what do you need from me?" "Mentorship. Access to your network when I need introductions, and..." I hesitate, as if the next request is difficult to make. "I'd like to audit your graduate seminar on sustainable design. I know I'm not enrolled in the graduate program, but if I'm going to make this work, I need that knowledge base. The graduate seminar is extremely competitive. I'll prove I belong there." I meet her eyes directly. "Give me 1 month. If I can't keep up with your graduate students, I'll bow out gracefully." Catherine considers this. In my original timeline, she offered this same opportunity to David when he returned from Columbia. It was how he positioned himself as the theoretical brain of our partnership while I handled the practical work. This time that opportunity is mine. 1 month, she agrees. "But Marcus, I have to ask, what about David Park? I know you 2 have been planning to work together after graduation." The question I've been waiting for. "David's incredibly talented," I say carefully, "but we have different visions for our careers. He's interested in large-scale commercial projects, urban planning, the kind of high-profile work that builds reputations. I respect that, but it's not my path." It's a perfect answer, generous enough to avoid seeming petty, clear enough to establish separation, and strategic enough to position David exactly where I want him, as the ambitious one, the one who cares more about prestige than purpose. Catherine nods approvingly. "That's very mature. Too many partnerships fail because people assume shared talent means shared goals." By 9 a.m., I've secured not just Catherine's mentorship, but her active support for my independent venture. She's agreed to introduce me to 3 major sustainable design consultants to let me present my business plan to her advanced entrepreneurship class, and, most crucially, to recommend me for the city's Emerging Architect Fellowship Program, which comes with $50,000 in seed funding and automatic inclusion in the municipal bidding process. David will learn about this fellowship exactly 90 minutes after the application deadline passes. I spend the rest of the morning making calls to my 3 prospective clients, using knowledge from my first life to position myself as the perfect solution to their upcoming problems. By lunch, I have meetings scheduled with all 3 for next week. But the real masterstroke comes at 2 p.m., when I walk into the offices of Meridian Design Group for my interview. Janet Meridian, the firm's founder, is a sharp woman in her 60s who built her company from nothing and has little patience for entitled young architects. In my original timeline, both David and I worked here, me for 2 years, him for 6 months before Columbia. I know exactly what she values and exactly what she despises. "Mr. Chen," she says, reviewing my portfolio, "your work is impressive. Professor Mills speaks very highly of you." "Thank you, Miss Meridian, but I have to be honest, I'm not here to accept your offer." Her eyebrows rise. "I beg your pardon?" "Your offer is generous, and working at Meridian would be an incredible learning experience. But I've decided to start my own practice, focusing on affordable housing and sustainable design." I lean forward slightly. "What I'd like to propose instead is a partnership." Partnership. Meridian handles high-end commercial projects beautifully, but you've always said the affordable housing market is too constrained by budget limitations to be profitable. What if I could prove that wrong? I slide a folder across her desk. These are 3 projects I'm already committed to. Small scale, tight budgets, but with the potential to demonstrate that good design doesn't have to be expensive. If I can deliver quality work that comes in under budget and on time, would you consider subcontracting similar projects to me in the future? Janet opens the folder, examining my preliminary designs and budget projections. I know she's impressed because her poker face slips for just a moment. These are solutions to problems that Meridian has struggled with for years. "This is highly unusual," she says finally. "So is hiring 24-year-olds as full partners," I reply with a smile. "But sometimes unusual approaches yield unusual results." She closes the folder and extends her hand. "I look forward to seeing what you can do, Mr. Chen." As I walk out of Meridian's offices, I can't help but grin. In my original timeline, this firm was where David and I first learned to compete with each other, where the seeds of our eventual partnership and my eventual destruction were planted. This time, I've turned Meridian into my launching pad while simultaneously ensuring that David's path leads somewhere else entirely. My phone buzzes with a text from Elena. "How did the interview go?" Another text, this one from David. "Hope you're enjoying your little rebellion. It won't last." I'm about to respond to Elena when I notice something that makes my blood run cold. Walking out of the coffee shop across the street is a woman I recognize, Rebecca Joe, the journalist who, in my original timeline, wouldn't enter my life for another 15 years. She's younger here, maybe 26, but it's definitely her. Same sharp eyes, same predatory smile. Rebecca Joe, who wrote the expose that destroyed my reputation after David fed her carefully constructed lies about my business practices. Rebecca Joe, who somehow always knew exactly which sources to interview and which documents to request. Rebecca Joe, who should have no reason to be in Seattle in 2002, since her career didn't take off until 2010. She's looking directly at me through the coffee shop window, and she's smiling. My phone buzzes again. Unknown number. Interesting moves, Marcus, but the game is bigger than you think. 3 weeks later, I'm standing in the shell of what will become Riverside Gardens, a 40-unit affordable housing complex that's about to make me the youngest architect in Seattle to win a Sustainable Design Award. The irony isn't lost on me. In my first life, I spent decades chasing recognition that always seemed just out of reach. This time, success is falling into my lap because I already know exactly what works. "Marcus, this is extraordinary," says James Morrison, the developer, examining my modified plans. "You've increased the unit count by 15% while reducing construction costs by 12%. How is that possible?" "Because I know exactly which building techniques will become standard practice in the next decade, I think. Because I've seen 30 years of architectural evolution and can cherry-pick the best innovations. Because I'm essentially cheating, using knowledge that won't be common for years. Out loud, I say, it's about thinking systematically instead of conventionally. Every decision affects every other decision. It's been 3 weeks since my confrontation with David, and my strategy is working flawlessly. Too flawlessly. I've signed 6 projects, hired 2 junior architects, both of whom I know will become excellent senior staff in a few years, and established myself as Seattle's go-to architect for innovative, affordable housing. The City Fellowship came through, bringing not just funding, but credibility. Catherine Mills has introduced me to every major sustainable design consultant on the West Coast. David, meanwhile, has been forced onto exactly the path I intended. Without the Meridian connection I've severed, without Professor Mills' mentorship I've claimed, he's had to pivot to commercial real estate development, starting at the bottom with a firm that handles strip malls and office parks. It's not prestigious work, but it's lucrative, and it plays to his actual strengths in a way that architecture never did. I should be celebrating. Instead, I'm increasingly certain that I'm walking into a trap. The first sign was Rebecca Joe's continued presence in Seattle. I've spotted her 3 more times, always at a distance, always watching, always disappearing before I can approach her. Yesterday, I discovered she's been asking questions about my business, claiming to be researching a story about young entrepreneurs in architecture. But Rebecca Joe doesn't write fluff pieces about young entrepreneurs. She's an investigative journalist who specializes in exposing corruption and fraud. The second sign is how easily everything is falling into place. In my original timeline, building a successful architecture practice took years of grinding work, countless rejections, and dozens of small failures that taught essential lessons. This time, I'm succeeding so fast that I haven't had time to build the infrastructure to support that success. I'm operating on borrowed time and future knowledge, but I haven't developed the wisdom that comes from actual experience. The third sign is David's silence. He declared war 3 weeks ago, then vanished. No interference with my clients, no attempts to sabotage my projects, no escalation of our conflict. David Park doesn't surrender, and he doesn't wait, which means he's planning something bigger. Mr. Chen? James Morrison is still waiting for me to respond to something. Sorry, could you repeat that? I asked about your availability for the Northgate project, the one Miss Joe mentioned when she interviewed me yesterday. Every alarm bell in my head starts ringing at once. Miss Joe interviewed you? The journalist, very professional, very thorough. She seemed quite interested in your design process, especially how you managed to consistently deliver under budget. She said she was working on a feature about innovation in affordable housing. Rebecca Joe doesn't write features about innovation in affordable housing. She writes exposés about financial irregularities and criminal conspiracies. If she's interviewing my clients about my design process and budget management, she's looking for evidence of fraud. But what fraud? Everything I'm doing is completely legitimate. I'm not stealing designs, manipulating bids, or hiding costs. I'm just using knowledge from my first life to make better decisions. Except, how would I explain that knowledge if questioned? How would I prove that my innovative solutions came from legitimate research rather than insider information or industrial espionage? How would I demonstrate that my uncanny ability to anticipate market needs and solve design problems is based on architectural genius rather than some form of corruption? I can't, because from the outside, what I'm doing looks impossible. No one succeeds this fast, this consistently, without cutting corners or having unfair advantages. Mr. Chen, you look pale. I'm fine, I lie. What specifically did Miss Joe want to know? Mostly technical questions about your process, how you calculate material costs so accurately, how you anticipate regulatory changes, that sort of thing. She seemed particularly interested in your relationship with suppliers. How you manage to negotiate such favorable terms as a new firm. The relationship with suppliers. Of course. In my first life, it took me 5 years to build the network of contractors, suppliers, and subcontractors that I'm leveraging now. I know exactly which suppliers offer the best prices, which contractors are most reliable, which materials will see price increases next quarter. I've been using that knowledge to build my business, but I've been doing it with the confidence of someone who's worked with these people for decades. Except officially, I've never worked with them before. I'm a 24-year-old architect with no track record, somehow negotiating deals that should be impossible for someone at my experience level. Did she say when her article would be published? Next month, I believe. She's very excited about it. Said it could be a cover story if everything checks out. If everything checks out. The phrase sends ice through my veins. My phone buzzes. Text from an unknown number. Coffee tomorrow? 2 p.m., Pike Place Market. Come alone. R. Rebecca Joe. Finally ready to make contact. I spend the rest of the day trying to figure out what she knows and how she knows it. By evening, I've reached an uncomfortable conclusion. Someone is feeding her information. Someone who understands exactly what questions to ask and where to look for inconsistencies in my story. Someone like David. That night, Elena and I are having dinner when she casually mentions something that confirms my worst fears. I saw David today, she says, twirling pasta around her fork. At the library. He was researching something, surrounded by stacks of architecture journals and business magazines. Looked like he was working on some kind of project. Did you talk to him? Briefly. He asked about you, actually. How your business was going, whether you were handling the stress okay. He seemed concerned. Concerned? David Park, concerned about my well-being. The man who declared war on me 3 weeks ago, now expressing concern to my girlfriend. What kind of concerned? Elena shrugs. He said success could be dangerous for someone who wasn't prepared for it. That sometimes people make mistakes when things happen too fast. She pauses. Marcus, is everything okay? You've been different lately. More intense. I'm fine, I say automatically. Just focused on work. But I'm not fine. David isn't just planning to destroy me. He's planning to destroy me publicly, spectacularly, in a way that ensures I can never recover. He's weaponized Rebecca Joe's journalistic instincts, fed her just enough information to make her suspicious, then let her investigative nature do the rest. And the brilliant part is that everything she finds will be technically true. I am succeeding at an impossible rate. I do have knowledge that I shouldn't possess. I am operating with advantages that can't be explained through conventional means. The only problem is that I can't explain the real source of those advantages without sounding insane. I'm pouring wine when Elena's phone rings. She glances at the caller ID and frowns. Unknown number, she says, then answers. Hello? I watch her face change as she listens to whoever is on the other end. After 30 seconds, she hangs up without saying a word. Who was that? They said. Elena looks confused. They said to tell you that some secrets are too dangerous to keep, that you should be careful who you trust. She meets my eyes. Marcus, what's going on? Who would call me with a message like that? I set down the wine bottle with steady hands, but inside I'm falling apart. Because I recognize the tactic. In my first life, David used exactly this approach in the months before my final destruction. Anonymous calls, vague warnings, slowly isolating me from everyone I cared about by making them question my stability and judgment. I don't know, I tell Elena, but I'm going to find out. The next morning, I wake up to find an envelope slipped under my apartment door. Inside is a single sheet of paper with a printed message. Some people get second chances. Others get second chances to make the same mistakes. Which are you? A friend. Below the message is a photograph. It's me, taken yesterday at the Riverside Gardens site, but I'm not alone. In the background, barely visible unless you know where to look, is David. He's been watching me, documenting my movements, preparing his case. The game has escalated beyond what I anticipated. This isn't just about competing for clients or professional success. This is about whether I can survive the scrutiny that my impossible success has attracted. At 2 p.m., I'm sitting in a coffee shop at Pike Place Market, waiting for Rebecca Joe. When she arrives, she's exactly as I remember her from my first life. Sharp, professional, and utterly ruthless. "Marcus Chen," she says, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thank you for meeting me." "Miss Joe, I understand you've been researching a story about my work." "I have. And I have to say, your story is fascinating. Almost too fascinating to believe." She opens a notebook and studies me with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey. "Tell me, Mr. Chen, how does a 24-year-old with no professional experience build a successful architecture firm in 3 weeks?" The question I've been dreading. The question that has no good answer. "Hard work and good planning," I say. Rebecca Joe smiles, and I know she doesn't believe a word of it. "Hard work and good planning." Rebecca Joe repeats my words like she's tasting something bitter. "That's interesting, because I've been doing some hard work of my own. Good planning, too." She slides a manila folder across the table. Inside are photocopies of contracts, supplier agreements, and client communications, documents that should be private, buried in the files of companies I work with. Someone with serious access has been feeding her information. "These are fascinating," she continues, tapping the folder. "Especially this contract with Morrison Development. You negotiated a materials discount that their previous architect couldn't secure after 5 years of working with the same suppliers. How do you explain that?" "I did my research." "Research." She flips through pages, each one a piece of evidence I can't explain. Like knowing that Cascade Steel would drop their prices 12% in October, 3 months before they announced the price change, or predicting that the city would fast-track environmental approvals for projects using recycled concrete, a policy change that wasn't made public until last week. Every word she speaks tightens the noose around my neck. In my eagerness to leverage my knowledge of the future, I've created a pattern that looks exactly like insider trading, corruption, or industrial espionage. "Miss Joe, I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." She closes the folder. "Marcus Chen, 24 years old, graduates with a 3.4 GPA and no notable achievements. 3 weeks later, he's running the most successful emerging architecture firm in Seattle, making deals that seasoned professionals can't match, solving problems that have stumped the industry for years." She leans forward, and I see the killer instinct that made her career. "Either you're the most naturally gifted architect in history, or you're getting help from someone with access to confidential information. Given that the former is statistically impossible, I'm investigating the latter." "What do you want?" "The truth. Who's feeding you information? Which suppliers are giving you kickbacks? What government official is tipping you off about policy changes?" Her voice becomes almost gentle. "Marcus, I've been investigating corruption for 8 years. I know what it looks like. The only question is whether you're the mastermind or just the front man." I stare at her across the table, this woman who destroyed my reputation in my first life and is preparing to do it again in my second. The irony is perfect. I'm being accused of the exact corruption I was falsely accused of before, except this time I'm technically guilty of something impossible to explain. "I think we're done here. I say, standing to leave. Marcus? Her voice stops me. I know you're meeting with David Park tonight. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? 8 o'clock, the University Bridge. He told me you'd be there. She smiles. He also told me to give you a message. Some secrets are too dangerous to keep. The same message Elena received. David isn't just feeding Rebecca information, he's orchestrating this entire confrontation, using her investigation as the weapon to destroy me. I leave Rebecca at the coffee shop and spend the afternoon trying to understand David's endgame. By evening, I've reached a chilling conclusion. He doesn't just want to ruin my second chance. He wants to prove that even with all my future knowledge, I'm still the same naive fool who trusted him the first time. At 8 p.m., I'm standing on the University Bridge, looking out over the dark water of Portage Bay. David arrives exactly on time, emerging from the shadows like the predator he's always been. Hello, Marcus. David. I don't turn around. Enjoying your collaboration with Rebecca Jo? She's very thorough, very professional, the kind of journalist who doesn't stop digging until she finds the truth. He moves to stand beside me at the railing. The question is, what truth will she find? You tell me. You're the one feeding her information. I'm providing context, background, helping her understand how remarkable your success really is. David's voice carries the same false friendship that fooled me for 20 years in my first life. She's particularly interested in your relationship with Elena. My blood freezes. Elena has nothing to do with this. Doesn't she? A young woman dating an architecture student who suddenly becomes wealthy and successful? Rebecca is wondering if Elena might have access to information through her internship at the city planning office. Information about upcoming projects, policy changes, regulatory decisions. Elena's internship. In my focus on preventing David's original betrayal, I'd forgotten about Elena's part-time job with the city. She processes permit applications, files environmental impact reports, handles the administrative side of urban development projects. She has access to information that could theoretically explain some of my success. Elena doesn't know anything about my business decisions. But she has access to information that could influence those decisions. And she loves you, Marcus. Love makes people do stupid things, like sharing confidential information with their boyfriends. The trap becomes clear. David isn't just planning to destroy my career. He's planning to destroy Elena's as well, making her the scapegoat for my impossible success. Rebecca's investigation will conclude that I'm succeeding through insider information provided by my girlfriend, who will lose her job, her reputation, and possibly face criminal charges. You bastard! I'm practical, David says calmly. You remember how this ends, don't you? Me with everything, you with nothing. The only difference is that this time you'll take Elena down with you. I turn to face him fully, and I see something that makes my skin crawl. David is enjoying this, not just winning, but the process of winning. The careful orchestration of my destruction, the precision of his revenge. It's art to him. Why? I ask. In our first life, I never did anything to you. I trusted you, supported you, treated you like a brother. Why did you hate me enough to destroy me? David's smile fades, and for a moment I see something raw and bitter in his eyes. Because you never earned it, he says quietly. Any of it. The success, the recognition, the respect. You just deserved it somehow. People looked at your work and saw genius. They looked at you and saw someone worth believing in. His voice becomes sharp. Do you know what it's like to be smarter, more driven, more strategic than someone, and watch them succeed effortlessly while you have to fight for every scrap of recognition? The honesty of it staggers me. So you decided to take it. I decided to prove that it was never really yours. That someone like me, someone who understands how the world actually works, deserves what you had. David straightens his shoulders. The first time, I had to wait 20 years to prove it. This time, it'll only take 3 weeks. And if I walk away? Leave Seattle? Start over somewhere else? Then Elena still goes down for the insider trading investigation that's already been opened. Rebecca has enough evidence to prosecute, whether you're here or not. David checks his watch. You have 72 hours before she publishes her exposé. After that, the criminal investigation begins. He starts to walk away, then pauses. Oh, and Marcus? That fellowship you're so proud of? The city council is meeting tomorrow to discuss revoking it based on preliminary findings of ethical violations. Professor Mills will be asked to testify about your character. He glances back at me. I wonder what she'll say when she learns that her favorite student has been lying to her from the beginning. I stand alone on the bridge for an hour after David leaves, staring into the black water and trying to find a way out of the maze he's constructed around me. Every move I've made, every success I've achieved has been turned into evidence of corruption. Worse, he's created a scenario where fighting back only makes me look more guilty. But as I replay our conversation, something bothers me. David's explanation for his original betrayal, jealousy over my unearned success, doesn't quite fit with my memories. In our first life, David was more successful than me in many ways. Better connected, more charismatic, more naturally gifted at the business side of architecture. He didn't need to steal my success. He could have built his own. Unless I pull out my phone and start making calls. If I'm right about what I'm beginning to suspect, then David's hatred isn't about jealousy or competition. It's about something much deeper, something that changes everything I thought I knew about our first life. 3 hours later, I'm sitting in my car outside the office of Patricia Williams, who was the city's chief urban planner during the late 1990s, now retired but still sharp as a knife. She agreed to meet me at midnight because, as she put it, anyone calling at this hour either has a genuine emergency or is completely insane, and both are interesting. Marcus Chen, she says, examining the business card I handed her. I remember that name. You designed the Waterfront Commons project, didn't you? Beautiful work. That was in my previous position, I say carefully. Miss Williams, I need to ask you about something from 1998, the Morrison Heights Development Project. Her expression shifts, becoming guarded. That's a long time ago. Why are you asking? Because I think someone's been lying to me about how that project was awarded. I lean forward. In 1998, there were 2 competing proposals for Morrison Heights. One from Meridian Design Group, one from a smaller firm called Park and Associates. The Park proposal won, even though it was from a firm with no track record. I need to know why. Patricia Williams is quiet for a long moment, studying my face in the dim light of her kitchen. Park and Associates, she says finally. David Park's father's firm. That was complicated. Complicated how? The Park proposal shouldn't have won. Technically, it was inferior in every way, design, cost efficiency, timeline, but there were political considerations. What kind of political considerations? The kind that end careers if you talk about them. She stands and walks to her window, looking out at the sleeping city. Mr. Chen, why are you really here? What does a 1998 zoning decision have to do with a young architect in 2002? I take a breath and make a decision that will either give me the truth or confirm my destruction. Because I think David Park has been using his father's connections to manipulate projects for years. And I think the Morrison Heights decision wasn't the first time he bent the rules to win. Patricia turns back to me, and I see recognition in her eyes. Not of me, but of the situation I'm describing. David Park, she says slowly. You know, he came to see me 2 weeks ago, asked very similar questions about you. The room seems to tilt. About me? About your projects, your clients, how a new firm could be so successful so quickly. She sits back down. He seemed very concerned about potential corruption in the bidding process, very civic-minded. David was here first. He's been laying groundwork, building his case against me while simultaneously covering his own tracks. But he made one mistake. He revealed that he knows about his father's corruption, which means he's been aware of it all along. Miss Williams, I need to know the truth about Morrison Heights. Not the official version, the real truth. She considers this for a long moment. The real truth is that Thomas Park, David's father, had photographs. Photographs? Of the city council member who chaired the development committee. Compromising photographs. The kind that end political careers and destroy marriages. Her voice becomes very quiet. Thomas Park built his entire business on information like that. He didn't win projects because he was the best architect. He won them because he knew which officials had secrets they couldn't afford to have exposed. The revelation hits me like a physical blow. David's father wasn't just a mediocre architect who got lucky. He was a blackmailer who built his firm on corruption and coercion. And David knew. How long did this go on? Years, maybe decades. Thomas Park had files on half the city government. When he died in 2000, everyone assumed the secrets died with him. But they didn't. No, Patricia says grimly. They didn't. David inherited everything. The business, the files, the leverage. That's how a 26-year-old with no track record managed to secure 6 major contracts in his first year of practice. Now I understand. David's success in our first life wasn't built on stealing my designs or manipulating our partnership. It was built on the foundation of blackmail and corruption that his father established. The theft of my company, the destruction of my reputation, that was just David covering his tracks, eliminating the one person who might have been able to expose the truth. Miss Williams, do you know what happened to those files? I assume David still has them. Why else would he be so confident, so successful? She meets my eyes. Mr. Chen, if you're thinking of challenging David Park, you need to understand what you're up against. This isn't just about business competition. This is about a young man who inherited the tools to destroy anyone who threatens him. I leave Patricia Williams' house with my worldview completely inverted. David didn't betray me out of jealousy or ambition. He betrayed me because I was a threat to the criminal enterprise he inherited from his father. My success, my integrity, my reputation for honest work made me dangerous to someone whose entire career was built on corruption. But if David is still using his father's files to manipulate projects and coerce officials, then he's vulnerable in a way he doesn't realize, because blackmail only works if your victims don't know that others are aware of their secrets. I spend the rest of the night planning my counterattack. If David wants to destroy me using Rebecca Joe's investigation, then I'll give her a much bigger story to investigate. Because the truth about David Park isn't just corruption, it's a multi-generational criminal conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of Seattle's government. At dawn, I'm standing outside Rebecca Joe's apartment building with a different manila folder, one that contains photocopied records from Patricia Williams' personal files, records she agreed to provide after I explained what David was planning to do to Elena. When Rebecca answers her door, she's surprised to see me. Marcus, this is unexpected. Miss Joe, you wanted the truth about my success. I'm here to give it to you. I hand her the folder. But I think you'll find that the real story isn't about me at all. She opens the folder and starts reading. I watch her expression change as she processes the implications of what she's seeing. These are records of a blackmail operation that's been running for 25 years, I finish. David Park didn't just feed you information about me, Miss Joe. He manipulated you into investigating the wrong person. Rebecca looks up from the documents, and I see the exact moment when she realizes she's been played. You're saying David Park is using you as a distraction? I'm saying David Park is continuing his father's business model, and if you investigate his contracts, his client relationships, and his political connections, you'll find evidence of corruption that makes my supposed insider trading look like a parking ticket. Rebecca Joe closes the folder and studies me with new interest. Why should I believe you? Because, I say, you're about to find out that everything David told you about me is technically true. I do have access to information I shouldn't have. I am succeeding at an impossible rate. I am operating with advantages that can't be explained through conventional means. I meet her eyes. But the source of those advantages isn't corruption, Miss Joe. It's something much stranger than that. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you want the biggest story of your career, you need to investigate David Park, not me. And if you do, you'll discover that my impossible success is the least impossible thing in this entire situation. Rebecca Joe looks at the folder again, then back at me. Mr. Chen, are you telling me that there's something supernatural about your knowledge? I consider how to answer that question, whether to reveal the impossible truth about my rebirth or find another way to explain my advantages. But before I can respond, my phone rings. Elena's name on the screen. Marcus, she says when I answer, and I can hear terror in her voice. Someone broke into our apartment. They didn't take anything, but they left something behind. What? A file, with my name on it. Marcus, it's full of documents from my work, conversations I've had, notes about projects I've processed. Someone's been watching me, documenting everything I do. David's next move. He's not just threatening to frame Elena, he's demonstrating that he has the evidence to do it whenever he chooses. Elena, get out of the apartment. Go to your sister's house. Don't talk to anyone. Don't answer any calls except from me. Marcus, what's happening? I'll explain everything later. Just go. Now. I hang up and find Rebecca Joe watching me with intense curiosity. Miss Joe, I say, how quickly can you investigate a story? Depends on the story. Then let me tell you about David Park, his father's files, and a conspiracy that's been hiding in plain sight for 25 years. I pause. Because I have 72 hours to prove that the most impossible thing about my success isn't that I know the future, it's that I survived this long in the first place. 48 hours later, I'm standing in the boardroom of the Seattle Municipal Building, surrounded by the most powerful people in the city's development industry. The emergency session of the City Council's Development Committee was called to address serious allegations of corruption in the architectural bidding process, but not the corruption David expected them to investigate. Rebecca Joe sits in the press gallery, her laptop open, fingers poised to publish the story that will end David Park's career and expose 25 years of systematic corruption. Next to her, Patricia Williams holds a box of files that document every project Thomas Park manipulated, every official he compromised, every secret he collected. David sits across the room, his face a mask of controlled fury. He knows he's been outmaneuvered, but he doesn't understand how. Ladies and gentlemen, says Council Chairman Robert Morrison, James Morrison's uncle, and one of the officials Thomas Park blackmailed. We're here to address allegations brought forward by investigative journalist Rebecca Joe regarding systematic corruption in municipal development projects dating back to 1995. I watch David's expression as the true scope of the investigation becomes clear. He thought he was attending a hearing about my supposed insider trading. Instead, he's walked into the complete exposure of his father's criminal enterprise. Miss Joe, Chairman Morrison continues, would you please present your findings? Rebecca stands, her voice carrying the authority of someone who knows she's about to break the biggest story of her career. Over the past 48 hours, I've uncovered evidence of a multi-generational blackmail operation targeting Seattle city officials. She clicks a remote, and a presentation appears on the screen behind her. Thomas Park, who died in 2000, systematically collected compromising information about city council members, planning commissioners, and development committee chairs. He used this information to secure favorable treatment for his architectural projects over a period of 25 years. The room erupts in murmurs. Several council members look uncomfortable, probably wondering if their own secrets are about to be exposed. Furthermore, Rebecca continues, I have evidence that these blackmail files were inherited by Thomas Park's son, David Park, who has continued his father's practices. She clicks again, and David's recent contracts appear on screen. In the past 2 years, David Park has secured 12 major development contracts, despite having minimal experience and consistently submitting inferior proposals. David stands abruptly. This is outrageous. I demand to know who's making these accusations. I am. Every head in the room turns toward me as I rise from my seat in the gallery. My name is Marcus Chen, and I have direct knowledge of David Park's criminal activities. I walk toward the witness table, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. Mr. Park has been using his father's blackmail files to coerce city officials, manipulate bidding processes, and eliminate competitors. That's a lie, David says, but his voice lacks conviction. Is it? I turn to address the full committee. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Park threatened to destroy my architectural firm unless I agreed to work under his direction. When I refused, he attempted to frame me for corruption by feeding false information to Miss Joe. I click the remote Rebecca handed me, and a new slide appears. Photographs of David meeting with Rebecca, entering city offices, accessing files that should have been confidential. However, during his investigation of my firm, Mr. Park made a critical error. He revealed knowledge of specific development projects and political decisions that he could only have obtained through his father's blackmail files. David's face goes white. He realizes I've turned his own trap against him. You see, Mr. Park was so focused on destroying me that he forgot the first rule of blackmail. Never reveal how much you know. I advance another slide, showing a timeline of David's contracts correlated with specific political decisions. Every project Mr. Park has won corresponds to a decision made by officials his father had compromising information about. Chairman Morrison leans forward. Mr. Chen, these are serious allegations. Do you have proof? I do. I gesture to Patricia Williams, who approaches with her box of files. Miss Williams served as chief urban planner from 1995 to 2001. She maintained personal records of every suspicious development decision during her tenure. Patricia opens the box and removes a thick folder. Thomas Park didn't just collect secrets. He was meticulous about documenting which secrets gave him leverage over which officials. These files contain photographs, recorded conversations, and detailed notes about every person he compromised. She hands the folder to Chairman Morrison, whose face becomes increasingly grim as he reviews the contents. Furthermore, I continue, I have evidence that David Park has continued to use these files. 3 days ago, he threatened to expose confidential information about a city employee unless I withdrew from several development projects. I play an audio recording. David's voice, clear and unmistakable, threatening to frame Elena for insider trading. You recorded our conversation, David says, no longer bothering to deny the allegations. I recorded everything, I reply. Every threat, every admission, every detail of your plan to continue your father's criminal enterprise. The room falls silent, except for the sound of Rebecca Joe's fingers flying across her keyboard, documenting every word for her story. Chairman Morrison sets down the files and fixes David with a stare that could melt steel. Mr. Park, in light of these allegations, this committee is immediately suspending all contracts with your firm pending a full criminal investigation. He pauses. Furthermore, I'm directing the city attorney to pursue charges of extortion, conspiracy, and corruption against you personally. David looks around the room, seeing his career, his freedom, and his father's legacy crumbling around him. When he speaks, his voice is barely controlled rage. You think you've won, Marcus? You think destroying me makes you the better man? He laughs bitterly. You want to know the truth? Your precious first life, your successful career, your reputation, none of it was real. The room goes quiet. David steps closer to me, his mask finally dropping completely. You think I stole your success? I created it. Every major contract you won, every client who chose your firm, every award you received, they all came because I made sure you succeeded. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? My father's files didn't just contain secrets about city officials, Marcus. They contained information about private developers, corporate executives, anyone with the power to make or break an architectural firm. David's smile is vicious. For 20 years, I used that leverage to ensure your success. Every time you submitted a proposal, I made sure the right people saw it favorably. Every time you needed a permit expedited, I made it happen. Every time a competitor threatened your business, I eliminated them. The revelation is staggering. My entire first life, everything I accomplished, everything I was proud of, it was all orchestrated by the man I thought had betrayed me. Why? I whisper. Because I loved you, you idiot. David's voice breaks slightly. Because you were my best friend, my partner, my brother. Because I wanted to see you succeed, and I had the power to make it happen. He straightens, regaining his composure. But success wasn't enough for you, was it? You had to be pure. You had to believe you'd earned it all through talent and hard work. You couldn't stand the thought that someone like me might have helped you. So you decided to destroy me. I decided to show you the truth, that without my protection, without my manipulation of the system, you were nothing, just another mediocre architect with good intentions. David's eyes are bright with unshed tears. I gave you 20 years of success, Marcus. 20 years of thinking you were better than me. And when I finally stopped protecting you, you collapsed in 6 months. The truth cuts deeper than any knife. My first life wasn't a story of betrayal. It was a story of dependence I never knew existed. David didn't steal my success. He created it, then took it away when I failed to appreciate what he'd done. And this time? I ask. This time you don't get my protection. This time you succeed or fail on your own merit. David turns to address the committee. Gentlemen, you can destroy me if you want. Prosecute me, imprison me, ruin my career. But ask yourself this. What happens to the development projects I've been manipulating? What happens when the officials I've been protecting suddenly find their secrets exposed? What happens to your careers when the full scope of this city's corruption becomes public? Chairman Morrison's face goes pale as he realizes the implications. David isn't just threatening himself. He's threatening to bring down the entire municipal government. You see, David continues, my father's files don't just document corruption, they document collaboration. Every official who took a bribe, every developer who paid one, every architect who looked the other way. If I go down, everyone goes down. Unless, I ask, understanding the game now. Unless we make a deal. I walk away, destroy the files, disappear from Seattle forever. In exchange, none of this becomes public. The investigation ends, the prosecutions stop, and everyone keeps their careers. The room erupts in whispered conversations as the committee members realize they're being blackmailed by the same person they're investigating. But I have one more card to play. Actually, David, there's a problem with your plan. I smile for the first time since this nightmare began. The files aren't yours anymore. His face goes white. What? 3 hours ago, Patricia Williams turned over copies of every document in your father's collection to the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. They're already building cases against everyone involved. I pause. Including you. You wouldn't. I already did. Because you're right about one thing, David. This time I succeed or fail on my own merit. And that means this time, when corruption is exposed, it actually gets prosecuted. David stares at me for a long moment, then starts laughing, a sound with no humor in it. You magnificent bastard, he says. You actually did it. You actually chose justice over self-preservation. I chose the truth over lies. The truth? David's laughter becomes bitter. The truth is that you've just destroyed the careers of dozens of people, including several who never did anything wrong except look the other way. The truth is that your moral victory will cost this city millions in legal fees and lost development. The truth is that you're still the same naive idealist who thinks the world rewards good intentions. He walks toward the door, then pauses. But you know what, Marcus? This time at least you earned your victory. Congratulations. I hope it's worth what it's going to cost you. David Park walks out of the municipal building and out of my life forever. 6 months later, he'll be serving 2 years in federal prison for corruption and extortion. But in this moment, watching him leave, I feel no satisfaction. Only the hollow ache of understanding that my greatest success was built on the sacrifice of someone who genuinely cared about me. The committee votes unanimously to refer David's case to federal prosecutors and to implement new oversight procedures for development contracts. Rebecca Joe publishes her exposé the next day, winning a Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism. And I walk out of that building knowing that I've finally achieved something purely my own. A victory that no one gave me, manipulated for me, or handed to me through corruption. It feels exactly as hollow as David predicted it would. 3 months after David's arrest, I'm standing in my new office, a converted warehouse in Georgetown that I've transformed into Seattle's most innovative architectural studio. The walls are covered with designs for affordable housing projects, sustainable development plans, and community centers that will serve neighborhoods ignored by larger firms. Everything I dreamed of building in my first life, I'm finally creating in my second. I should be celebrating. Instead, I'm staring at a letter from the FBI that makes my blood run cold. Mr. Chen, Agent Sarah Martinez had said when she delivered it personally that morning, your cooperation in the Park investigation was invaluable. However, our expanded investigation has revealed some irregularities in your own business practices that require clarification. The letter requests my presence at a federal building downtown next week for questioning about my unusual success rate and apparent foreknowledge of market conditions. The Park investigation didn't end with David's conviction. It opened a Pandora's box that has law enforcement examining every aspect of Seattle's development industry, including mine. Elena emerges from the kitchen of our new apartment. We moved after David's trial, needing space that wasn't tainted by memories of betrayal and surveillance. She's changed since learning the truth about David's threats against her. Stronger in some ways, but warier, more careful about trust. You're brooding again, she says, setting a cup of coffee beside me. The FBI wants to interview me next week. Her face tightens. About what? My business practices. Apparently, David's case has them questioning how anyone succeeds in this industry without corruption. I gesture toward the letter. They want to know how I've managed to consistently underbid competitors while maintaining quality, how I predict market changes so accurately, how I build client relationships so quickly. And what are you going to tell them? That's the million-dollar question. In exposing David's corruption, I've painted a target on myself. My success is still statistically impossible, still unexplainable through conventional means. The only difference is that now federal agents are asking the questions instead of investigative journalists. I don't know, I admit. Elena sits beside me, studying my face. Marcus, there's something you haven't told me. About how you knew David was planning to frame me. About how you anticipated his moves so perfectly. You've been different since graduation, more focused, more strategic, like you've seen all this before. She's getting close to the truth, and I'm not sure I'm ready to share it. How do you tell someone you love that you've lived this life before? That you know things about the future that you can't explain? How do you explain that every decision you've made together is influenced by knowledge of how your relationship failed the first time? Elena. My phone rings before I can finish the thought. Rebecca Joe's name on the display. Marcus, we need to talk, she says without preamble. There's been a development in the Park case. 20 minutes later, Rebecca is sitting in my office, her usual professional demeanor replaced by something approaching concern. The FBI found something in David's files, she says. Something that changes everything we thought we knew about this case. She slides a folder across my desk. Inside are photocopied documents, financial records, correspondence, and what appears to be a detailed psychological profile. What am I looking at? David's real target, Rebecca says grimly. This entire operation, the blackmail, the corruption, the systematic manipulation of development projects, it wasn't about money or power. It was about you. I read the documents more carefully. They detail a 20-year plan to build me up professionally while simultaneously documenting every aspect of my life. Personal relationships, psychological weaknesses, career ambitions. It's not the work of a criminal empire, it's the obsession of a single individual. David has been planning your destruction since college, Rebecca continues. Every success you achieved in your first career, he orchestrated. Every failure you suffered, he caused. He spent 2 decades creating the perfect conditions for your downfall. The scope of it is staggering. David didn't just manipulate my professional life. He influenced my personal relationships, my social connections, even my choice of apartment and neighborhood. He was the invisible architect of my entire existence. But why? Rebecca points to a psychological evaluation dated 1998. Apparently, David had himself analyzed by a private psychiatrist. According to this report, David displayed symptoms of severe narcissistic personality disorder combined with obsessive-compulsive tendencies. The psychiatrist noted his pathological need to control outcomes and his inability to form genuine emotional connections, or cutters. That doesn't explain 20 years of manipulation. Actually, it does. Rebecca flips to another page. The psychiatrist believed David was incapable of experiencing love or friendship in conventional ways. Instead, he forms obsessive attachments to people he can control. You weren't his friend, Marcus. You were his masterpiece. The words hit me like ice water. Masterpiece? Think about it. David took an ordinary architecture student and turned him into Seattle's most successful young architect. He created your career, managed your relationships, orchestrated your entire life story, and then when he was satisfied with his creation, he destroyed it to prove his power over you. I stare at the documents, understanding finally dawning. David's betrayal in my first life wasn't business or personal, it was artistic. He spent 20 years crafting the perfect tragedy, with me as the unwitting protagonist. The FBI believes David planned to repeat the cycle, Rebecca continues. Build you up again, then destroy you again, each time proving his superiority. The corruption charges were just the beginning. He had plans that would have taken decades to fully implement. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Some masterpieces deserve sequels. A friend. The same anonymous messaging that plagued me during David's original campaign. But David is in federal prison, with no access to outside communication beyond monitored calls to his lawyer. Rebecca, I say slowly, how many people knew about David's psychological evaluation? The FBI, his lawyer, the prosecution team, and... She stops, her face going pale. The psychiatrist who conducted it, Dr. Elizabeth Harper. I'm already Googling the name when Rebecca grabs my arm. Marcus, Dr. Harper disappeared 3 weeks ago. Her office was cleaned out, her files removed, her whereabouts unknown. She meets my eyes. The FBI thinks David had an accomplice, someone who helped him plan and execute his operations. The anonymous messages, the continued surveillance, the perfect timing of every move against me. It wasn't just David. He had a partner, someone with access to psychological expertise and professional resources. Someone who's still free, I realize. Someone who's continuing his work. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rings. The number is blocked, but I answer anyway. Mr. Chen. The voice is female, cultured, with the slight accent of someone who's spent time in academic circles. I believe we need to discuss your future. Dr. Harper, I presume. Very good. Yes, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Harper, and I was David's collaborator in what you might call a longitudinal study of human behavior modification. Her tone is clinical, detached. David's incarceration has unfortunately interrupted our research, but I see no reason why the experiment can't continue. Experiment. The systematic manipulation of a subject's environment to test hypotheses about success, failure, and psychological resilience. She sounds like she's discussing laboratory mice. David was the implementer, but I was the architect of the methodology. His arrest simply means I'll need to take a more direct role. What do you want? I want to complete the study. David proved that your success could be artificially created and destroyed. Now I want to test whether you can maintain authentic success when subjected to systematic pressure. Her voice becomes warmer, almost friendly. Consider it a compliment, Mr. Chen. Most people aren't psychologically interesting enough to warrant this level of attention. And if I refuse to participate? Oh, but you already are participating. Your girlfriend's job interview next week? The one at the prestigious planning firm she's so excited about? I'm on their consulting board. Your fellowship renewal hearing? I'll be providing expert testimony about your psychological fitness for leadership. She pauses. Your FBI interview next week? I've submitted a professional assessment suggesting you may be suffering from delusional episodes brought on by success-related stress. The trap becomes clear. Dr. Harper has positioned herself at every crucial juncture of my life, ready to influence outcomes in whatever direction serves her research interests. The difference between David and me, she continues, is that David was emotionally invested in destroying you. I'm simply curious about what breaks you and what doesn't. Much more scientific. You're insane. I'm thorough. And Mr. Chen, unlike David's dramatic confrontations, my methods are subtle, long-term, and virtually undetectable. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering which successes are real and which are manufactured, which failures are natural and which are engineered. Her voice becomes almost gentle. But don't worry. The uncertainty is part of the experiment. The line goes dead. I sit in my office, surrounded by the evidence of my hard-won success, and realize that defeating David was only the beginning. He was the visible enemy, the obvious threat. Dr. Harper is something far more dangerous, a puppet master who operates from the shadows, turning my entire life into a psychological experiment. Elena finds me there an hour later, staring at the FBI letter and the anonymous text message. "Marcus?" She touches my shoulder gently. "What's wrong?" I look at her, beautiful, trusting, unaware that her career is being manipulated by a woman who sees human beings as laboratory subjects. In my first life, I lost Elena because I was too naive to see David's betrayal coming. In this life, I might lose her because I'm too paranoid to trust that anything good can happen naturally. "Elena," I say carefully, "do you remember when you applied for that interview next week? The one at Morrison and Associates?" "Of course. Why?" "How did you first hear about the position?" She thinks for a moment. "A woman called me. Said she'd gotten my name from Professor Mills. Thought I'd be perfect for their team." Her brow furrows. "Actually, that was a little strange. She knew a lot about my background, my interests. More than you'd expect from a casual recommendation." Dr. Harper, already working her way into Elena's life, creating opportunities and dependencies that can be weaponized later. "Elena, I need to tell you something. About my success, about David, about everything that's been happening to us." I take her hands in mine. "But first, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "That interview next week? I want you to cancel it." "Marcus, this is the opportunity I've been waiting for. Please, trust me on this. Cancel the interview and I'll explain everything." Elena searches my face, and I see the exact moment when she realizes that our relationship has reached a crossroads. She can trust me and possibly sacrifice her career opportunity or pursue her dreams and risk walking into a trap I can't adequately explain. "Okay," she says finally. "I'll cancel it. But Marcus, if you're keeping secrets from me, if you're making decisions about my life without telling me why—" She doesn't finish the threat, but I hear it anyway. Outside our window, Seattle's skyline stretches toward Elliott Bay, every building representing someone's dream made manifest in steel and glass. In my first life, I helped build that skyline, never knowing that my success was manufactured. In this life, I've built something authentic, but now I'm discovering that authenticity might be just another form of manipulation. The real game is just beginning, and this time my opponent is invisible, patient, and absolutely brilliant. Dr. Harper is right about one thing. This is going to be much more interesting than David's crude emotional warfare, and much more dangerous.